We tend to always say the evolution of data protection like it's the only thing in IT that ever evolves. However, we say that data protection evolves specifically because the ways in which data needs to be protected are always evolving. It started with applications on physical systems, then moving to virtual systems, and now we have applications and data being created in containers as well as born on the cloud. Combine this with the ever-emerging regulations, new disasters, and cyber threats, backup and data resilience is evolving faster than ever. And on top of this, a new way of architecting an environment, IBM Cloud Paks, are helping clients create data in new ways. We want to start with a foundation of what IBM Cloud Paks are all about this week on the Data Resilience SpectrumCast. Welcome to another edition of the Data Resilience SpectrumCast. And again, as always, we have Randy Arsenault and our subject matter experts, Tricia Jang and Sean Sperry. Welcome, guys. As we started talking out before, this week, we're going to be talking about Cloud Paks. And we are actually going to turn it over to our resident expert in Cloud Paks, Randy Arsenault. Hey, Randy, you want to give us a little primer on our Cloud Paks?
Hey, Steve. Sure. And please don't ever call me expert again. We can talk a little bit about Cloud Paks. So I would assume that most of the people who are consuming this have probably heard of Cloud Paks, but just maybe for those who haven't, or as a little bit of a refresher course, we'll talk a little bit about what Cloud Paks are and kind of what they're intended to be and how storage and data services and data protection kind of plugs into the Cloud Paks. So the concept behind Cloud Paks is, the acquisition of Red Hat really filled a lot of requirements and gave us a lot of capabilities in terms of what we can bring to market. One of the key elements of that new ecosystem that was built is OpenShift, and using OpenShift as a de facto standard kind of enterprise orchestration and data management fabric layer, if you will. And Cloud Paks are the way that we've developed these pre-integrated solutions designed to target different use case environments using Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform as the architectural platform layer in the center. So if we start with a pretty simple kind of visual representation or a flow of how this works, hybrid multi-cloud architectures involve lots of different moving parts from on-premises as well as, one or more, typically more public cloud-based offerings, whether it's ours or AWS or Google or Azure or whatever. And then, of course, most clients have on-premises infrastructure as well. So we start with the infrastructure as kind of the chief building block. The next thing we start to think about is, okay, given that this is your infrastructure model or design pattern, what are the ways you want to deploy that infrastructure? And typically it will be, back in the olden days, it was kind of traditional data center, monolithic mainframe or, mini computer sitting in a data center. Then it was client server, then it was multi-tier, then it was cloud. And now it's, virtualization and a mishmash of all of them together. So generally there's going to be a hybrid mix of platforms, whether they're, virtualization and VM farms, whether it's containers and microservices, API driven consumable infrastructure and kind of everything in between. So the ecosystem now adds another layer of abstraction onto the infrastructure and makes the consumption of that infrastructure more flexible, but potentially also a little bit more complicated. So the next thing we want, or the next dimension that we layer on top of this is, okay, how do you want to actually use this ecosystem or these design patterns and workloads? What are you targeting them at? And the most common ones that we see are things like artificial intelligence, the application of machine learning and deep learning across a bunch of different domains and a bunch of different workloads. Application modernization, bringing traditional client server applications and monolithic apps into more of a container native world. Tailored business services, so rapid time to value, highly customized and bespoke services targeted at consumers or particular workloads or parts of your supply chain. Hyper personalization, the whole know your customer metaphor for being able to target individuals in very small subsections of your demographic for marketing programs and pricing and so forth. Computer vision. There are lots of others. These are just some representative examples. So if you think about a multi-cloud architecture as being at the base level, at the foundation level, infrastructure, which has to be consumed in one or more different methods or with one or more different methods. And then those services are presented as a series of different workloads or different capabilities, right? So this is a fairly simple model. So let's take a kind of top-down view this time and look at some of these advanced capabilities. And again, these are just some examples. There are many others. If we choose application modernization, for instance, so let's say the client has multiple platforms on premises. It could be, System I, it could be mainframe, it could be open systems, it could be x86, whatever. And they wish to modernize their infrastructure and modernize their service delivery capability. So now each of these different environments presents a different view or a different externalized set of APIs or services that can be consumed by these different platforms. This is why prior to the emergence of containerization and arguably virtualization, this was really difficult because you'd have these standalone silos of infrastructure, which were consumed in very specific ways by very specific, end user use cases. Well, now with the introduction of OpenShift and the introduction of Kubernetes, and in fact, Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform in general, we now have the ability to deploy services in each of these different environments using the Cloud Paks. So the Cloud Paks are at the back end or at the kind of orchestration layer, basically Red Hat OpenShift. Then other software products built onto them from either the IBM portfolio or select third-party, in some case open source or commercial products, which are designed to externalize those services so they can be consumed in a consistent way regardless of what the back-end infrastructure looks like. So think about what virtualization does, right? Virtualization abstracts physical infrastructure and delivers it as a series of abstracted consumable services. This takes it to the next level, making it even more granular, more flexible, more scalable, and really delivering the ability to, the concept of write once, run anywhere, right? You can deploy a given application on any environment, running anywhere from any back-end infrastructural element, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. There are, again, some other ancillary things around the Cloud Pak portfolio, whether it's Cloud Pak for Data System, which is an appliance solution, Cloud Pak for Data as a Service. There are a number of public cloud consumable services. We talked last week or the week before about Satellite, which is our new hyperconverged and sort of edge-enabled infrastructure model for delivering this on premises and having that seamless integration between the cloud and the edge. A lot of these apply there as well. And the last thing I'll mention before we kind of open it up is the answer, or our answer as a storage brand and as systems to supporting these Cloud Paks, is Storage Suite for Cloud Paks, which is the data services fabric layer that delivers all of the necessary enterprise services, consumption, data movement, data protection, data reduction. We've talked a lot about, of course, Spectrum Protect Plus and the ability to do container level backup and data protection, which is critically important. So this is where the storage suite plays into the broader solution for Cloud Paks. So, Cloud Paks are the principal vehicle by which we're delivering our value and our software capabilities and our portfolio to the marketplace. And Storage Suite for Cloud Paks is how we, as the brand, storage brand and systems brand, are supporting that with a robust enterprise-ready set of data services. So in a nutshell, that's kind of Cloud Paks and Storage Suite for Cloud Paks at a pretty high level, but that's basically what it is. So Cloud Paks are, pretty well documented. In fact, if you go on, if you go on the IBM website, you can get a lot of information about, what Cloud Paks entail. They are designed, again, to be, facilitators for integration, automation, modernization, write once, run anywhere. This goes into a fair bit of detail on what each of them implies and what they utilize and how they are applied within the enterprise. And again, at the end of the day, the goal of these cloud packs is really to make the consumption of the services and the portfolio elements easier, more repeatable, and simpler for customers to consume and deploy. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a great case study, if you will, or example of how Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform, which is really rapidly becoming the enterprise de facto standard platform for containers and multi-cloud implementations, how it can be leveraged to deliver services in a really repeatable, consistent, cost-effective, and easy to manage way.
I think that's the best overall.
Exhale.
That's ready. I think that's the best overall concise delivery of what is a cloud pack I've heard in an extremely long time. So if we think about it, right, and tell me where I'm wrong, you got the cloud pack, which is helping to modernize and help, and it's also changing the way folks are architecting their environment and creating the data, but making things simpler, right? I mean, that's always the objective. Then you have the storage suite for the cloud packs, which is really helping you, and I like the term you use, data services, helping to leverage data service to actually manage that data throughout this new architectural environment, right? Which is really, really important. What kind of things are integrated into Storage Suite for Cloud Paks?
So Storage Suite for Cloud Paks is a pretty comprehensive portfolio. It includes SpectrumScale, our ultra high performance kind of HPC focused clustered file system, although not just HPC. Cloud Object Storage, which is our geographically or geodispersed, multi petabyte scale, exabyte scale cloud object platform. Spectrum Discover, metadata management, optimization, and curation. Spectrum Virtualized for public cloud, which is kind of the fabric that allows these infrastructural elements to connect to not only our infrastructure, but third-party 400 plus third-party heterogeneous storage platforms. It also includes, from the Red Hat stack, it includes OCS, OpenShift Container Storage, as well as Ceph, which is the data plane for OCS. So those are all bundled into and included within Storage Suite for Cloud Paks. Now, there's also, and as you guys well know, there's also Spectrum Protect for Cloud Paks, which is kind of a separate add-on, if you will, or kind of a sidecar that can be purchased along with Storage Suite for Cloud Paks to enable that container level backup using Spectrum Protect Plus. So those are all of the elements that are included in the suite. Now, the reality is in many cases, we don't have exact demographic profiles yet, but in many cases, OpenShift Container Storage, which is the Red Hat solution, realistically resolves or is well suited to most of the workload environments that cloud packs are being dropped into. So it's plug and play, it's integrated, it's operator level integration within an OpenShift container platform cluster. So very simple to implement and use. The good news though, for clients that are looking beyond kind of the baseline workloads or the more garden variety workloads, is that the inclusion of Scale and Cause and Discover and the other services that are bundled in with it also support those more specialized workloads where ultra high throughput, ultra low latency, massive scale is required. So it's a really robust mix of services that delivers kind of everything you would need to support every class of workload, from ultra high performance, low latency IoT type workloads all the way up to and including cold archive to tape if you so desire. So it's kind of that and everything in between.
So let's be clear, right? Just so we have a clear understanding. Spectrum Protect Plus is not a part of the storage suite for cloud packs. However, you can get Spectrum Protect Plus, because this is a data resilience podcast, within the cloud pack for multi-cloud manager, right? And the multi-cloud manager, do you happen to know the additional components that make up the management of that?
I can find it. I don't have it offhand, but give me 1 second and I'll tell you. I've got it in a visual right here. Let me bring this up. This is real-time content creation. This is exciting.
Well, Randy's looking for that. I mean, with the Cloud Pak for multi-cloud, the deployment of the Spectrum Protect Plus server is really simple. Like Randy said, it just deploys as an operator directly into a container. And so that is really a great enhancement on how you can just plug and play, literally.
Yeah.
But don't forget, you could also have your existing Spectrum Protect Plus server off-site, so you've got that hybrid solution that Randy also mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. No, so this is a very simplified view of what some of the elements are within each of the cloud packs, and it's not all inclusive. There are others. That's why the little ellipsis dots are in each square. So, for instance, in the MCM, the IBM components are the multi-cloud manager suite, which is the Watson-enabled, AI-enabled cloud automation manager as well. There are others, and then there are also, again, for most of these, there are select third-party either open source or commercial offerings that are integrated and made available as part of it as well. So, for example, Ansible for workload automation and asset management, as well as Red Hat Cloud Platforms, or CloudForms rather. So, again, there are many others, and in fact, if you go on to the if you go into the website here, we can find each of them individually and see what's included in each. So. Let me see if I can find that real quick while we're talking. I can't. So anyway.
And then the thing in addition is not only are you able to, like in this cloud pack for multi-cloud, deploy the Spectrum Protect Plus server, but then we can also back up the data with the Spectrum Protect Plus client, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to see that across a lot of these cloud packs, us introducing that data protection element.
Yep, exactly. And there are, as you guys again well know, there's specialized data protection policies for different workloads, and different industries have governmental and industry compliance requirements. So it's a diverse range of requirements and policies, all of which are supported by, and by the way, a lot of them are supported natively within OCP. So OCP actually has natively a very robust security and data protection set of services, but it's enhanced even further and made more granular, more efficient with the introduction of Spectrum Protect Plus. So
from an architecture and deployment perspective, Sean and Tricia, I'm interested in your thought process, right? We always talk about this evolution of data protection. Started out with applications on physical systems. Now we had applications on virtual systems, applications moving into containers. And even though the Cloud Pak is a containerized set of solutions, right, we're finding that, it's a bundled set of solutions. What are some of the thoughts we should be thinking about as far as deployment and architecture around protection or resilience when it comes to this yet another new environment, right? What are some of the important things?
So I see it much like your normal, physical systems. You've got to look at the level of protection you're providing. Are you just protecting the PVCs and the actual data, like a disk type of backup? Or are you moving it up and also protecting the metadata, the resources? Or are you moving it up the next layer and doing application aware type of protection? And so when you look at where we're at with Spectrum Protect Plus, we're at that PVC and resources, and soon we'll be in application aware. So that's where
that's a really important differentiator, by the way, because there are other native and third-party solutions that claim to do kind of data protection. They're only operating at the PVC layer. They're not including the metadata or the, application aware snap kind of quiesce capability. So that's an important differentiator.
John, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I think Randy did an excellent job of kind of explaining the layers and how we're layering this together and why we're doing it. But to me, as a technologist who has to make this stuff work in the end, right? I think Randy also mentioned you have a lot more permutations and configurations now available than you used to have. So to me, the biggest thing that I think people need to think of, and we need to think of it in deploying data protection for these solutions, is requirements, right? Yep. Is the stack that you're actually deploying configured in such a way that the solution will support it? And for me, that comes down to the details of types of storage that you're using, specific versions of OpenShift, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's kind of a double-edged sword. And one of the challenges we face, both as we take this narrative to clients and partners and the press and analysts and others, there is a perception that this introduces a lot of complexity, right? Because you've got this multi-level stack, you've got multiple levels of abstraction, each of which has sometimes a multiplicative effect in terms of how many possible ways you can consume that service. So there's a lot of disintermediation that exists between, an edge device and a piece of data sitting on a flash core module somewhere. And while that may be true, the solutions are architected in such a way that a lot of that complexity and a lot of that abstraction, obfuscation is hidden by design. So you can, if you want to get down to that level of granularity, you can be very explicit in terms of how you provision services and how you, code your API access to the infrastructure, or you can be very generic and use kind of out of the box, fit for purpose, kind of pre-integrated and standardized approaches to do it. So it can be complex if you want it to be complex, but it doesn't have to be, right? The goal is to simplify it. So it sounds counterintuitive, like simplification through complexity, but it's more like simplification through automation, because a lot of the layers of abstraction and the connection from physical to virtual and abstract is automated. And not only is it automated, but because of our rich legacy in AI, it's intelligent. So it does so in intelligent, automated ways, which makes the implementation much easier.
Yep. And I think that's, to me, that's the value that Red Hat and IBM are trying to add and are adding.
Yeah.
I think we are at a point now, though, however, where a lot of these things are coming together for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So in some cases, you just have to be aware of the details and the history in order to make this stuff function together.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And one of the metaphors we use a lot is, and Steve and I have been talking about this for the past 5 years. It's like the evolution from bare metal, big iron, to client server, to cloud, to virtualization, and now to containerization, microservices, and serverless computing, right? And everything consumed as a service. That evolutionary path has not been without its pitfalls and barriers and hurdles and face plants. So and this is no different. I mean, this is a pretty significant reimagining of how services are delivered, and a lot of our clients are going through this process, and they're on this journey. And it's there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. There's a lot of architectural decisions that have to be made. I think one of the messages that we're trying to take to the market with Cloud Paks is, if you choose wisely and you do your best to future-proof your environment and base it on open standards, which are extensible and consumable as APIs, or with APIs rather, you do yourself a great service, because regardless of how these things evolve going forward, you're going to be covered. You're going to be able to support them. So and that story tends to be pretty, like, people get that. People understand that narrative for the most part.
What I find pretty interesting is, and Randy, I think you said it right. For the applications that make businesses money, there's been a lot of things that have evolved and changed to make life easier, right? And this really goes along the lines of search for virtualization, to containers, to the abstraction of all of that, to be able to put things together in bundles like we're doing with Cloud Paks to make life easier. And now, like you said, we can actually run, it doesn't matter what your underlying infrastructure is, and we can move these applications around, and it really doesn't affect us. What it does affect is the data services, right? So from a backup perspective, it used to be if I had an application running on a physical system, then it was that physical system where the agent was deployed. Now we're in agentless scenarios these days, but that's where the agent lived. And then it was a one-to-one peer-to-peer connection, right? Now that these applications or containers can actually move around the environment and can kind of live anywhere and spin up and be fragmented, right? To Sean's point, there's a level of complexity behind the scenes that I think maybe as the software becomes more and more intelligent, it can figure these kinds of things out. But as an architect and as a person that is accountable for making sure that the environment is just protected, right? Mm-hmm. You got to have some understanding of what's going on, or you could really be left holding the bag.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it also speaks to the skill profile of people within organizations that are delivering these services to end users or to endpoints. It's becoming both in some ways more specialized, but in other ways less specialized. So for example, the OpenShift administrator who's responsible for managing the OCP cluster can, if you choose to engineer it in such a way, they can have full control over everything from the provisioning to the maintenance to the onboarding, offboarding, protection, all of it can be under their control at the operator level, which in some cases is fine. I mean, you want to have that narrow span of control because it reduces time to market. However, going back to the previous discussion about compliance requirements and data protection and regulations and so forth, that may not be sufficient because it may not be reasonable to expect that person to be, fully cognizant of all of the regulatory compliance requirements, et cetera. So you may need to have, that person, working in conjunction with a data protection specialist or kind of a data security analyst or something, or a CISO type person who handles that.
See that with Spectrum Protect Plus, because yes, your Kubernetes admin could be out there creating snapshots locally inside of Red Hat, but if they want to get that additional level protection, they do have to coordinate with that Protect administrator and your backup resiliency person to make sure you're also creating a copy offsite. And then to the other point of the underlying complexity of the setup, they've got to understand enough that when we start talking restores, that's a whole nother point. Are you doing just the restore of the PVCs? Are you restoring to a different cluster? What are your restore options in itself? That you have to have an understanding.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. And we talk all the time about on this podcast about the insurance aspect of data protection. It's like you hope you never have to use it, but you really want to make sure that you have it when you need it. And this is exactly that. I mean, if you've got a giant, massively elastic microservices-based application and you have some weird failure or some, cataclysmic event, if you can't recover to that point in time or recover that, atomic transaction reliability or resiliency, then you're potentially in a lot of trouble. Now, there is resilience that is engineered into these architectures on some level. So some of it's handled by the core infrastructure of OCP, but that you don't want to, that's not necessarily always going to fulfill the full set of requirements that you have. Again, depending on your industry, your compliance requirements, et cetera. So good point.
Team, I think this has been a really good conversation about Cloud Paks. I think there's been a desire I've heard from a lot of folks in trying to understand this, and then even getting down to the deeper level of around the data services and data packs. The data services that live inside the Cloud Paks. So this week in the news, right, something that is near and dear to us all, that has hit us pretty hard, is the fact that Cores, Molson, got hit with a cyber attack. Cyber attacks seem to just keep happening and happening and happening. Randy, you want to give us an overview there?
Yeah, this one this one hits a little too close to home. So if I get emotional, forgive me. I'll have to recover and try to contain myself. So Molson Cores a few weeks back was hit with a ransomware attack. Now they didn't publicly go into a lot of detail about what it entailed, but what was interesting as I was kind of looking into this was that because they're a publicly traded company, they were required to submit a Form 8K to the SEC, disclosing the event and when it occurred and how it occurred. And this is kind of interesting. Like I kind of knew this was a requirement. This was an SEC requirement, but I'd never actually looked at one of these forms. And it's pretty interesting. It's like it goes into a fair amount of detail on exactly what occurred, when it occurred, what were the risk factors, what's the potential implication on valuation and on the finances and transactional integrity of the company. So it was pretty interesting. And again, we can get sort of numb to this because we talk about it every week. I mean, this is such a commonplace thing now. I've got my, spinning the wheel of misfortune, you can just randomly do a search and you'll find 1,000, in the last week or so, you'll find 1,000, breaches or cyber attacks or ransomware attacks or, phishing situations. So this is such a widespread problem, and it really, really does create a massive requirement for everything we talk about every week. So containerization, microservices, all these advanced modernization technologies and paradigms do not in any way, shape, or form obviate the need for data protection. So this is a foundational thing that's going to be required forever and ever. So
yeah, and I found this story interesting because it really shows that these type of cyber attacks can impact all sorts of businesses. And so I don't know exactly what software was attacked, but it could have been their control line for their manufacturing or something, the automation piece. So infrastructure that's dependent upon IT is everywhere, and if it's not protected,
and it's like you can come after my bank account, you can come after my Facebook account. Don't you dare come after my beer.
It talked about it hit their shipping systems as well. So it's going to delay me getting my my 6-pack, I think.
Unacceptable.
I was going to say, usually when you read the stories, the news stories, right, and even a case, I'm betting, you don't see the systems described in detail as to what was taken out, but you see the implications. I couldn't get a driver's license, right? We couldn't ship any beer for 4 days. The city was closed down for 4 days, and we couldn't fix any potholes in the streets.
Right.
And like you say, it's just, it seems like it's thousands, it's at least hundreds of these per week. A day does not go by when you don't see dozens of large companies, critical companies, private companies, public institutions, every type of customer actually taking service outages.
Well, maybe now that the beer supply chain has been disrupted, we'll finally start taking it serious.
Somebody will take it serious.
That's my hope.
Because we didn't care about it before.
That's right. We can only hope. So anyway, that was, again, on any given week, there's 1,000 to choose from, but this one, because it did hit sort of close to home, I thought we'd talk about that one.
Well, that's our community service effort here, is to make it more widespread in its exposure so that someone can actually do something about it. Damn it.
Yes.
Team, I want to thank all of you again this week. Appreciate it. Next week will be our 25th episode. And next week we'll have a special guest where we're going to focus on what IBM can do to help you determine your cyber resilience. So I'm really looking forward to that episode. So
we're going to have to start thinking about merch. We're going to have a merch store pretty soon, I think.
We are going to have to have a merch store.
Our tens of fans are probably hungry for some branded merch.
With that, everyone, thank you very much. And I appreciate it, and have a good day.